Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and support me. In the ancient world of Dawthorn, the Magic Alliance stood as a fragile yet powerful union. For centuries, the world's dominant races, elves, dwarves, orcs, and humans, had kept a tense peace, bound together by the threads of magic that course through each race in unique ways. Their history was written in the blood of countless wars, but the last 100 years had seen relative calm. However, that calm was always at risk of shattering. And now, as the Magic Alliance prepared for its first ever election of a president, the tensions simmered just beneath the surface. The election wasn't merely about governance, it was about survival. Without unity, the alliance could crumble into civil war, and the old wounds between the races would tear open once again. Allure Thorne knew this better than anyone. Allure stood before the great marble steps of the Hall of the Elders, her black mage robes flowing in the early morning breeze. Her auburn hair, tied back in a tight braid, framed her sharp, determined features. She was the human candidate, and she knew her task was monumental. The other races saw humans as ambitious, reckless, too quick to seize power. Winning this election meant more than securing her own victory. It meant proving that humanity could be trusted, that they could rise above the old prejudices and bring a new era of peace. She took a deep breath, gazing at the towering elven spires in the distance. This was the start of her journey, and she knew every step would be fraught with danger, both seen and unseen. The election was weeks away, and the campaign ahead would test her in ways she had never imagined. Allure's first stop was the forest kingdom of the elves, a place of ancient beauty and deeper mistrust. The elves had lived for millennia, long before humans had even learned to harness magic. Their candidate, Kieran Brightleaf, was the embodiment of elven elegance and tradition. He was tall and graceful, with eyes that seemed to see beyond the present moment, as if he already knew the outcome of this race. To him, Allure was little more than a child playing at politics. The debate between them took place in the heart of the Silverleaf Forest, under the watchful eyes of the Elven Council. The trees themselves seemed to listen, their branches swaying ever so slightly as the candidates took their positions. Kieran stood with his arms crossed, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Allure Thorne," he began, his voice smooth and melodic, "you speak of unity and peace, but how can your kinda who have only known magic for a few short centuries possibly understand what it means to lead a world steeped in ancient traditions?" Allure met his gaze without flinching. "It's true that humans have not lived as long as the elves or dwarves, but we have one thing that I believe sets us apart: adaptability. Where other races hold to the past, we look to the future. That is why I'm here, not to disrespect your traditions, but to offer a new way forward." Kieran's smile faded slightly. "And yet, history teaches us that humans often look to the future only when it benefits them. How can we trust that you won't abandon the alliance the moment it no longer suits your people's ambitions?" Allure's heart raced. This was exactly the kind of doubt she had expected. But she was prepared. "The future I envision isn't just for humans, it's for all races, and I'm willing to prove that through action, not just words." The debate continued for hours, with Kieran trying to undermine her at every turn, but Allure held her ground. She spoke of the benefits of cooperation, of how the alliance could be stronger together than apart. And as the sun set over the Silverleaf Forest, something remarkable happened. Allure noticed a shift in the Elven Council's demeanor. They were listening, really listening. When the debate ended, Kieran offered her a curt nod before turning away. But Allure had made her point. She had shown the elves that she was not to be underestimated. She left the Silverleaf Forest with a quiet sense of victory, knowing she had earned their respect, if not yet their full support. Her next challenge awaited in the iron-bound halls of the dwarves. During Iron Fist, the dwarf candidate, was a stark contrast to Kieran. Where Kieran was smooth and elegant, Durin was blunt and practical. He ruled the minds with an iron fist literally and had little patience for diplomacy. The dwarf kingdom was nestled deep within the Dragonspine Mountains, a labyrinth of tunnels and forges that echoed with the sounds of hammers striking metal. Allure arrived in the middle of a crisis. One of the largest veins of iron ore had collapsed, trapping dozens of miners beneath the rubble. Durin had no time for politics. His people were in danger. Without hesitation, Allure offered her help. She used her magic to stabilize the collapsing tunnels, conjuring barriers of stone and earth to prevent further cave-ins. Her magic wasn't as physically powerful as the dwarves' natural strength, but it was precise, and that precision saved lives. By the time the last miner was pulled to safety, Durin was watching her with a new sense of respect. "You didn't have to help," he grunted, his voice rough as gravel. "But you did." "That says something." "I'm not here just to talk," Allure replied, wiping the sweat from her brow. "I'm here to prove that we can work together, no matter our differences." Durin nodded, the corners of his mouth twitching into what might have been a smile. "You've earned a fair hearing, human." The days that followed were grueling. Allure faced countless challenges, both physical and political, but she never wavered. She debated fiercely with Durin about the future of the Magic Alliance, and while the dwarf was stubborn, he could not deny her logic. The dwarves valued strength, and though Allure was not a warrior, she had shown a different kind of strength, the strength of perseverance, of intellect, and of compassion. When she left the Dragonspine Mountains, Allure knew she had made another ally, or at least softened another heart. But the hardest challenge still awaited her: the orcs. The orc candidate, Grommash Steelclaw, was as fierce as his name suggested. The orcs were a warlike people, and they had long chafed under the leadership of the other races. They saw the presidency of the Magic Alliance as their chance to finally take control, to shape the future of the world in their own image. Grommash was determined to win, and he made no secret of his disdain for Allure and the other candidates. The orc capital of Stonefang was a harsh, barren place, surrounded by jagged cliffs and windswept plains. It was a land where only the strong survived, and the orcs prided themselves on their strength. Allure knew that diplomacy alone would not win their respect. She would have to prove herself in combat. Grommash challenged her to a duel, a traditional Orcish trial by combat. It was a public spectacle, with hundreds of orcs gathered in a massive arena to watch. Allure stood in the center of the ring, her heart pounding in her chest as Grommash towered over her, his massive axe gleaming in the sunlight. "This is foolish," she thought, but there was no turning back now. The duel began, and Grommash charged at her with terrifying speed. Allure dodged to the side, using her magic to create a barrier of wind and stone. But Grommash was relentless, smashing through her defenses with raw strength. Allure knew she couldn't win through brute force, so she changed her strategy. She focused on outsmarting him, using her magic to create illusions and traps, leading him into false openings. It was a dangerous game, but it worked. As the battle wore on, Grommash grew frustrated, swinging wildly as Allure danced just out of reach. In the end, it wasn't strength that won the day, but cunning. Allure used a powerful spell to create a wall of light, blinding Grommash for just a moment. In that brief window, she disarmed him, sending his axe clattering to the ground. The arena fell silent. Allure stood over Grommash, her chest heaving, her magic crackling in the air around her. For a moment, she thought the orcs might riot. But then, to her surprise, Grommash laughed, a deep, booming laugh that echoed through the arena. "You fought well, human," he said, rising to his feet. "You have the heart of a warrior." Allure lowered her staff, heart still pounding from the intensity of the duel. The orcs surrounding the arena remained quiet, watching their leader and her with intense, unreadable expressions. Grommash Steelclaw grinned, baring his teeth as he wiped blood from a small cut on his forehead. He had underestimated her, but he wasn't angry. Orcs respected strength, even when it came in forms they didn't expect. And Allure had shown a strength that was rare in their brutal world. With a wave of his massive hand, Grommash gestured for her to come closer. "You've proven yourself today, Mage. You fight with brains when others would use brawn, and I respect that. But remember this, strength of mind is only one part of what it takes to lead. You'll need more than that to survive in this world. I understand, Allure said, catching her breath. But the Alliance doesn't just need warriors. It needs leaders who can unite all our people, who can forge something new from the old divisions. Grommash gave a slow nod. Perhaps. We'll see if your words carry as much weight as your spells. He turned to the crowd of orcs who had been watching in silence. This one has earned my respect. Let's see if she can earn yours. The crowd erupted into cheers. It wasn't a victory in the conventional sense, but it was a step forward. Allure knew that the orcs were not entirely won over, but they had seen her fight, seen her stand her ground against their strongest, and that meant something in this world. She left the orc capital knowing that she had forged a tentative bond with Grommash, and that might be enough. But as she traveled back to the neutral city of Valinor, where the final debate would take place, she couldn't shake the feeling that something darker was at work. The assassination attempt on her life had been too calculated, too precise. Someone wanted to disrupt this election, to ensure that the fragile peace of the Magic Alliance was shattered before it even had a chance to take root. In the days leading up to the debate, Allure worked tirelessly to gather information. She met with her allies, those who had come to support her after seeing her efforts to bridge the divide between races. During Ironfist had sent word from the Dwarven halls, expressing his tentative support. Kieran Brightleaf had remained silent, but she suspected he too was watching closely, waiting to see how the events unfolded. The final debate was held in the Grand Amphitheatre of Valinor, a neutral city that stood at the crossroads of the magical world. Its stone pillars and marble walkways gleamed in the sunlight as representatives from every race gathered to witness the event. The air was thick with tension, and Allure knew this would be her last chance to prove herself to those who still doubted her. The amphitheater was packed, the atmosphere electric with anticipation. Allure stood on one side of the stage, her rivals on the other. Kieran, with his elven grace, Durin, solid and unyielding, and Grommash, towering and fierce. Each represented their race's ideals, and each had their own vision for the future of the Magic Alliance. As the debate began, Kieran was the first to speak, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of elven tradition. He spoke of the need to preserve the purity of the races, to maintain the ancient ways that had kept the world in balance for so long. His words were elegant, his tone smooth, but Allure sensed the undercurrent of fear in Thema, the fear of change, of losing the control the elves had long held over the Alliance. Durin followed, his speech blunt and pragmatic. He spoke of the need for strength, for leadership that could stand firm in the face of adversity. The dwarves, he said, had long been the backbone of the Alliance, and it was time for a leader who could bring stability and security to the world. His words resonated with the more cautious members of the audience, those who feared the chaos that could come from too much change. Grommash, as always, was direct and forceful. He spoke of the orcs' desire for more representation, for a leader who would not just talk of unity but would fight for it. His vision was one of power, of strength overcoming all obstacles. The orcs in the audience roared in approval, but Allure knew that his approach would only deepen the divisions that already existed. When it was her turn to speak, Allure stepped forward, her heart pounding. She knew that her words would have to reach not just the minds of the people but their hearts as well. She took a deep breath, letting the silence settle before she began. "We stand at a crossroads," she said, her voice clear and strong. "For centuries, we have fought, bled, and died to maintain the fragile peace between our races. But that peace is no longer enough. The world is changing, and we must change with it. We cannot continue to hold to the old ways, to the divisions that have kept us apart. We must look beyond our differences, beyond our prejudices, and see what truly binds us together." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Each of our races brings something unique to the Alliance. The elves' wisdom, the dwarves' strength, the orcs' courage, and the humans' adaptability. But it is only by working together, by embracing those differences, that we can truly build a future worth fighting for. The amphitheater was silent, the audience hanging on her every word. I know that trust does not come easily, Allure continued, her gaze sweeping the crowd. And I know that many of you still doubt me. You doubt that a human can lead this alliance, that I can represent all of you. But I am not here to lead just the humans. I am here to lead all of us, to prove that we are stronger together than we ever were apart. A murmur ran through the crowd, but Allure pressed on. There are those who want to see us fail, who want to tear down what we are building. They hide in the shadows, sowing distrust and fear. But I will not let them win. I have uncovered a conspiracy, one that seeks to destroy everything we have worked for. Gasps echoed through the amphitheater as Allure raised her hand, revealing the evidence she had gathered. Documents, letters, all pointing to a coordinated effort by extremists from every race to sabotage the election. They had tried to kill her, to silence her, but they had failed. These are the true enemies of the Magic Alliance, she said, her voice hard. Not the differences between us, but those who would use those differences to divide us. I stand here today not just as a candidate, but as a protector of the Alliance, of everything we have built, and I will not stop until this conspiracy is brought to justice. The amphitheater erupted into chaos as the crowd reacted to the revelation. The elders of each race quickly moved to restore order, but Allure could see the shift happening. People were listening, they were seeing the truth. As the final moments of the debate approached, Allure stepped back, letting her words speak for themselves. She had done all she could. Now it was in the hands of the people. The election took place the next day. The air was thick with anticipation, and Allure could feel the weight of history pressing down on her as she waited for the results. Hours passed as the votes were counted, and when the final tally was announced, a stunned silence fell over the city. Allure Thorne had won. The victory was narrow, but it was decisive. The people had chosen her to lead them, to guide the Magic Alliance into a new era. As she stood on the steps of the Hall of the Elders, the sun setting behind her, Allure felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. But she was ready. With her rivals standing by her side, Allure addressed the crowd. "This is not just my victory," she said, her voice carrying over the crowd. "This is a victory for all of us. For the elves, the dwarves, the orcs, and the humans. We have chosen unity over division, hope over fear. And together, we will build a future that none of us could have imagined alone." The crowd erupted into cheers, and for the first time, Allure allowed herself to believe that the Magic Alliance could truly stand united. It would not be easy. There would be challenges ahead, enemies both within and outside the Alliance who would seek to tear down what they had built. But for now, in this moment, Allure had done the impossible. She had won the election, and more importantly, she had shown the world that the future was not something to fear, but something to fight for. And fight she would.